thank you sincerely for joining, and welcome everyone to today's virtual tour of the South Hebron Hills, exploring the geopolitics and lived realities of communities living in Area C of the West Bank. My name is Umm Il-Kheir, and I'm the Communications and Membership Director of the Green Olive Collective, a binational information center and tour guiding cooperative committed to a democratic future and an end to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. We provide communities around the world with insights into the apartheid policies of the occupation and the resources to engage in meaningful advocacy in solidarity with Palestinians. I have worked in partnership with the communities of the South Hebron Hills since 2015 as a member of various solidarity initiatives, and the fate of the communities there is an issue that is extremely dear to me. I am particularly glad that my dear friend, Awdah Hathaleen from the community of Il-Kheir will be joining us today and speaking from his own lived experience about the severe impact of military occupation and the consequences it has for the residents of the South Hebron Hills. He is a powerful advocate on behalf of his community and seems to maintain a sense of purpose and a sense of humor, even through the most dire of circumstances. I'm in awe of him. And Green Olive Collective is extremely proud and happy to have him here with us today. Your contributions for this event will go to sustain both of our work, amplifying the voices of communities facing displacement to combat the increasingly authoritarian policies of the new government, and to raise local and transnational awareness about the violence of occupation and the threat of eviction in the South Hebron Hills. And I'll share the link now where you can contribute. We need contributions from you, our wider community, in order to cover the cost of this event and sustain future publicly accessible initiatives in support of human rights. You can donate at greenolivetours.com/contributions, which I have just shared. And we will donate 10% of proceeds from today's event to community projects in Il-Kheir, where Awdah is from, who will be speaking with us today, including projects like greenhouses, a honeybee farm, and a new vehicle to replace those illegally confiscated by the army in recent months. The last thing I'll say before beginning is that at the end of the virtual tour, we'll open for questions and conversation. So save your questions, keep them in mind, write them down if they're useful to you. I always tend to forget during different sessions and presentations, so I always find it handy to be reminded. And then we'll open up the floor for a broader conversation and discussion at the end. With that, thank you again, and let's begin the tour. I'll also note that this is my first time using certain technology tonight, and I do anticipate there's going to be some mishaps. Your compassion in advance is appreciated. So one moment while I get things going. Beautiful. And with that, let's begin our virtual tour. Welcome, everyone, to the South Hebron Hills. Here we see the city of Yatta, an urban center of close to 120,000 people in the south of the West Bank, located directly beneath Hebron, which we can see up above here. Masat of Yatta, or the Yatta district, as it's called in Arabic, is a beautiful expanse of hills, which you can see here covered in wildflowers, that is home to 19 Palestinian villages that share a regional council and together make up roughly 2,000 people and 200 families. The residents experience incredible hardship living under a military occupation, determined not to recognize their historical claims to the land and to drive them out of the region. Here, where the villages are marked in the South Hebron Hills, Masaf al-Yatta, drive them out of these lands and into Yatta. There's a common right-wing Israeli narrative that these communities are squatters who build illegally on their land. To understand both how egregious these claims are and why the government of Israel is determined to expel these communities en masse, it's important to take a broader geopolitical and geographic perspective and zoom out, which I'll do now. Looking from this vantage, we can see why this region has always been a crossroads and a corridor for travel, trade, pilgrims, and movement at the intersection of 3 continents. During the Ottoman Empire, it was part of a large trade routes also between Alexandria here, Cairo, and Damascus. And by the end of the Ottoman Empire, there were railroads, including the Hijaz Railroad that went from Damascus down to Medina and Mecca below. And this was especially, Palestine especially, was a rich corridor for trade, the exchange of cultures, community, and for the travel between the different regions that were connected here. The city of Yatta was incorporated into the Ottoman Empire in 1517. I'll zoom in on Yatta again. Here. And as it grew into the 1800s, people started being drawn to the more affordable and spacious lands southeast of the city, here, where the villages are today. Originally, they may have been living there seasonally, but by the middle of the 1800s, there are records of more permanent communities, often living in natural or dug out caves that are common in the region to today. Here is a map of Palestine and its adjacent districts, published in London in 1843, where you can see several existing villages that still exist and we'll be visiting on today's virtual tour. Zooming in on the map, you can see here, and I was particularly excited to find, Yatta. Here's Hebron, or Al-Khalil in Arabic. Clearly in the Ottoman times, this was the Hebron district. And you can see in Masaf al-Yatta, or the South Hebron Hills in the southeast of Yatta, several villages and communities that I've visited quite often, that I visited this last week. Included in them is Susia here, Jinbe, which we can see in 1843 was outside of the Hebron district in the Ottoman Empire, but today is north of the 1949 armistice line that marks the border of the West Bank and is thus in the Yatta district. Atwani, which we'll be visiting today on our virtual tour, and several other communities in the region. When this map was made in 1843, Lord Palmerston was the British Foreign Secretary, and he proposed the establishment of a regional zone within the Ottoman Empire, which would be under British protection and which would constitute a human buffer zone to prevent the establishment of a political entity among the various Arab regions. This is taken from Sami Adwan's side-by-side parallel histories of Israel-Palestine. I give this very broad historical overview because the current policy of Israel in the South Hebron Hills has to be understood within this broader geopolitical history related to nationalism and European intervention in the region. Lord Palmerston's vision of a British buffer zone in the Arab world would of course be realized with the institution of the British Mandate decades later in 1918. And when Israel was established in 1948, it adopted the task of establishing itself as a geopolitical extension of Europe and the United States and the Middle East that would act as a buffer against the Arab world. In order to do this, Israel adopted a few guidelines and guiding logics and principles, some of them inherited from the British, that continue to dictate policy towards Palestinians on both sides of the Green Line, whether it be in the Galilee, Jerusalem, Negev, or the South Hebron Hills. These guiding principles include acquiring maximum land with minimum Palestinians, establishing Israeli territorial contiguity and Palestinian discontinuity, and, as we shall see today, making life unbearable so Palestinians are forced to leave their lands. Creating Israeli territorial contiguity and Palestinian discontinuity is often done through the creation to today of human buffer zones, and we'll discover exactly what that looks like as we continue. Jumping ahead, the South Hebron Hills came under Israeli control in 1967, and today we'll see how those principles shown on the prior slide are continuing to be enforced at the expense of local residents. When Israel conquered the West Bank and instituted military rule in 1967, then Minister Yigal Allon proposed a plan for its administration that is now commonly referred to as the Allon Plan. The Allon Plan essentially proposed in 1967 that this corridor of land on the west of the West, at the west of the West Bank, the east of the West Bank, my apologies, would be annexed to Israel, creating a buffer zone with Jordan and a buffer in relation to the broader Arab world. These lands in the more populous areas where Palestinians live in the major cities, Jenin, Nablus, Ramallah, Jericho, Hebron, seen on the map, the population centers would become, according to the plan Allon proposed in 1967, some sort of Palestinian autonomy of an undefined nature. Again, we can see here the basic logic of maximum land under Israeli control with minimum Palestinians, annexing these territories that were agricultural and more sparsely densely, driving people to the cities, Palestinian residents of this buffer corridor to the cities, and relinquishing control over the Palestinian population centers. While this plan was never formally adopted, the drive to annex these territories, including here in the southeast of the West Bank, where the South Hebron Hills and the South Yatta is, the drive to compel them to move towards the cities is alive and active today, as we'll see in real detail going forward. This plan to annex the territory here on the east of the West Bank, creating a buffer zone, would really be formalized through the Oslo Accords, which separated the West Bank into areas A, B, and C. Area A being comprised of 18% of the West Bank and of the Palestinian urban areas, including Ramallah, Bethlehem, Nablus, etc., and in name being under the full security and civilian control of the Palestinian Authority. Area B being mostly comprised of land that is a buffer to the urban districts of Area A and is in name under the security control of Israel and civilian control of the PA. And Area C, which is 60% of the West Bank, comprised mostly of agricultural lands, and is under the full security and civilian control of the Israeli military today. Being under full Israeli military control has some grave consequences, and I wanted to highlight some key points around life in Area C. The first of which is that Palestinians living in Area C are not citizens but subjects of military administration and have no democratic representation in the institutions which govern their life. This is particularly clear in relation to the existence of what is called the civil administration, which is a military unit charged with administering the civilian infrastructure and resources to residents of Area C, including the South Hebron Hills, including water, electricity. And though the military is obligated as the occupying power under international law to provide for the civilian needs of the people in Area C, it denies Palestinians in the region adequate access to infrastructure for water, electricity, and building permits, exactly because the military is still acting under the dictates of the Allon Plan and the de facto mission of, as much as possible, annexing in fact, if not in law yet, though of course legal annexation has been discussed in recent years, this territory. And lastly, Palestinians living in Area C have no civil rights and are tried in military courts without due process or basic democratic rights considered standard internationally. Now, if we look at the map of the South Hebron Hills more closely, and even this map here of Area C in red, we'll see that this area of Area C exactly mirrors almost, or very nearly mirrors exactly the boundaries between areas in the West Bank that was proposed under the Alon plan here. You can see it mirrors. And even the infrastructure and planning in the West Bank that has occurred is built in order to institute exactly those divisions between the agricultural and urban centers of the West Bank and bifurcate the region into those zones. So here, going up and down the West Bank, this road, a central thoroughfare, is Route 60. And Route 60 was built as a physical barrier, also enforcing the border proposed by Alon between what would be annexed by Israel and is now still intended to be annexed by Israel, many would claim, and the Palestinian urban centers, which still are claimed to be Palestinian autonomies of an undefined nature. In the South Hebron Hills, if we zoom in, you can see Route 60 here, snaking down the West Bank, and then a secondary road called Route 317, which goes around the city of Yatta, again, containing Yatta, which is part of the logic, disrupting the contiguity of Palestinian life and disrupting the flow of people and goods from the South Hebron Hills here, where we'll be touring today, and the city that these communities historically developed in relation to. The cities in the South Hebron Hills historically sold their goods in Yatta, and up to today, of course, still do. But this road, 317, one, creates a physical barrier disrupting grazing lands, for example, disrupting the flow of people to the city and making the traditional flows of commerce and communication much more difficult, as we'll also hear more about throughout today's tour. And hearkening back to Lord Palmerston's tactic of human buffer zones, as we'll see, and here I'll exit from this and go back to the general map. I just showed you Route 317. On the map here, this is Route 317. Here's Yatta, here's Route 317. And today we'll be visiting several communities, including Umm Il-Kheir, Atwani, and Susia, three villages that historically formed a corridor in relationship to Yatta, and which today each have a settlement beside them as a human buffer disrupting the flow of people and commerce. So beside Umm Il-Kheir, there's the settlement of Carmel. Besides Twani, there's Ma'on and then Chavat Ma'on here. And the settlement, the Israeli settlement of Susia, is on Route 317, next to Susia, the Palestinian village. Each of these settlements form an Israeli corridor disrupting the contiguity of Palestinian territory and making it very difficult for the communities, the Palestinian communities in the South Hebron Hills to subsist and to thrive as they have, though, as we'll see, their incredibly resilient and their steadfastness is miraculous to me. With that, we'll begin our virtual tour and head to Umm Il-Kheir. Now, if all of us together were traveling to Umm Il-Kheir, as I often do from Jerusalem, we would go and drive exactly down Route 317 towards the community, just like this. This is Route 317 heading south into the West Bank and towards Umm Il-Kheir. We can see Yatta here in the distance, and we'll take a left past the settlement of Carmel. We can see here the front of the settlement and a huge stone facade they've built in the last years. It's always frustrating for me to see them build such large structures when the Palestinian communities and the people I have friendships and relationships with aren't allowed to build. So we're taking the left best up. You can see also the barbed wire fence that surrounds the entirety of the settlement. And jumping ahead, I want to point out just a few things. The first of which is that we can see these large cement blocks as we approach the village. At first glance, some people may not know what they are. They are in fact effectively roadblocks that the military puts in to the roads to create what's called a flying checkpoint. A soldier stands behind the roadblock once it's placed in the road, and cars can't pass without going around it. And as they pass, soldiers check everyone's ID to make sure that they are residents of the region, which generally restricts free movement, and sometimes as a form of collective punishment when there's civil unrest or political dissent, they will block the passages to the entire region or to a specific village. We'll continue towards Il-Kheir. Another roadblock to the right. And here I want to point out something that may seem unremarkable, a sign that says Il-Kheir. However, as we've begun to discuss, the government is intent on erasing these communities and is not intent on giving any sort of public recognition of their existence. So this sign was actually placed by a coalition of activists and residents of Il-Kheir who took it upon themselves through a direct action to mark the public sphere and to recognize the community. Now we're turning left again into Il-Kheir. For me, when I get to this point of the drive, when we arrive, I'm always glad because I know that very soon I'll be surrounded by friends and the many children who will inevitably crowd around. When we get out of the car exactly where we were a moment ago, we'll see to our right the structures and houses of Il-Kheir, tents, zinco and tin houses, and homes of the community. We'll see directly before us the settlement of Carmel. And this is interesting. Generally, the communities that we're going to visit today, like Sustia or Atawani, have settlements across the hill, very close by, and in very intimate proximity, but very rarely are they directly beside each other. Carmel was built in 1981. The land was first expropriated by the army as a military outpost and then given to settlers to build a village. And this here in front of us, this yellow fence, is the barrier. There's no distance now. The communities are on top of each other. Carmel is on the majority of the historical land of Il-Kheir, and Awdah, who will be joining with soon, will share much more about that. To our left, we would see the Il-Kheir International Community Center, a wonderful place, a center for gatherings and meetings, for education and summer camps for the children, and where many dinners and tea drinking sessions have occurred. And if we were all there together today, I imagine we'd be sitting very much in a setting like this, listening to Awdah standing here, talk to us about the community and host us there. And with that, we'll return to the map shortly. I'll pass this over to Awdah to speak with us. Awdah, I'd asked you to unmute. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I did.
Brilliant. Hi, friend. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Do you hear me well first?
Yes, I can hear you.
First, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be with you guys all tonight. Thanks, Aries, for organizing all. It's really important and it's really needed, especially, like these months. Sorry, let me introduce myself. My name is Awdah Hathaleen. I'm 28 years old. I'm from Umm Il-Kheir village. I'm an English teacher and I'm a human rights activist since, like several years. I'm living here in Umm Il-Kheir. First, I'm going to let you know or tell you more about Umm Il-Kheir, about the village and about us here. Here in Umm Il-Kheir, we are 32 families, around 180 people. All the people who are living here, they are refugees. They came from Arad in 1948 when the catastrophe took place, when Nakba, as we the Palestinians say, it happened in 1948. So we were living there. So when it took place, we got transferred from our land and we came here exactly where you saw in the video, to this land here, and we bought it from other Palestinians who are living in the city. And our ancestors that time, they were really intelligent, they were really genius, because they got the papers, the documents which prove that this land is ours. And we lived here our normal Bedouin life from 1948 until 1982. And in the beginning of 1982, the Israeli occupation started to build the settlement which you saw in the video. The settlement started here as a military checkpoint, just like a quick checkpoint, stopping people from going and like going around. But this military checkpoint expanded step by step, year by year, until it became one of the biggest settlements in South Hebron Hills. And it really caused the Palestinians who have the land here a lot of different problems. First of all, they confiscated more than half of our land. Half of our land now inside the fence of the settlement. We cannot, use it. We cannot get to it. We cannot, we just see our land inside the fence, and we cannot do anything because they are stronger than us. They took it, by force. They kicked the people out from their land. And after that, they were trying, and until now they still trying to let the people leave their land by putting them under a lot of pressure, by, for example, preventing the water. So just imagine 180 people here. We are not allowed to get water. We can get water only 7 hours a week. 7 hours a week for a Bedouin community, 180 people with their animals, with their agricultural fields. It's totally not enough. And we tried to dig a well to make to collect the water from the rain. But what happened? The Israeli civil administration prevented the people who were working, arrested them, and we paid a fine for that. So we cannot get water. They confiscated, more than half of our land. And after that, in the beginning of 90s, they built big chicken farms east of the village. So the village nowadays, surrounded by the fence of the settlements, or by the settlements from the 3 sides. And from the 4th side, they built a big, long chicken farms belong to the settlements. And just imagine with me that the electricity, we the Palestinians, we the humans who are living here, we are not allowed to get electricity. But the chicken who are east of us, just less than 100 meters from here, they have electricity 24 hours. And the electricity is going from west, from the settlement to the chicken farms, over the people, above the people, but we cannot get electricity. And it's something which it's really clear that the Israeli authority here, they don't want the people to live. They don't want them to be like the others, to be like humans, because we are in 2023 and we cannot get enough water. We cannot get electricity. All of our electricity is from solar panels, and we all know the system of solar panels. like it depends on the sun, and if there is no sun, this means that we will stay without electricity, especially like in the winter. And after that, in 2007, it was the first demolition process which happened here. And if I'm going to talk about like every demolition process, it will take me, like I need hours to finish. But 2007, it was the first demolition process which happened here. 6 houses got destroyed. More than 28 people became homeless. And from that day, from February 2007 until today, Al-Khair people faced more than 16 demolition process. And when I say demolition process, it doesn't mean one house. A demolition process means like a few files, and every file like contain a few houses. So more than 105 structures got destroyed. Most of the people here, their houses got destroyed at least 1 time or 2 times, some of them 4 and 5 times. And we are the most village which got demolition orders, which got demolition process, which got, confiscations by the Israeli civil administration. And the demolition, it's not about only destroying your house in front of your eyes. It's not about, like they attack your father, or like beat your mom, or like throw your sister. It's not, for me, it's not about all of that. It's about the feeling. It's about like how you will feel while they are coming, like early morning. They prevent anyone to get inside the village. They prevent anyone to go out of the village. And they enter by like with the bulldozers, with a lot of forces to the houses, and you don't know which house they will destroy. You don't know like what will happen. You don't know like how many people will be homeless. Your children will start crying, and you will be in a position that you have no answers for all their questions. It's really destroying the feeling. It's really like affect everyone here. Especially the children, more than like through the last statistic, which we did with one of the Palestinian NGOs, we found, like a really shocked number that more than, like 60% from our children who are less than 16 see nightmares. Like it's really like a big number, and it's really scary. If just now, like if like a Palestinian, for example, just a Palestinian bulldozer will enter the village, all the children will run away because all what they faced. So the demolition affected the people here in really hard way. And as I said, like in the beginning, like every single person in Al-Khair have a lot of stories about, like the demolition, about the settlers attacks, which is the fourth problem which the people here facing. Like the settlers attack. The settlers, they did everything bad anyone can imagine all the world. They attacked the people. They stole their goats, their sheep. They broke their cars, and they attacked them also like physically. And there is a lot of stories about that. Anyway, like there is a lot to say, there is a lot to explain, but I'm gonna mention 2 things, like that I'm gonna focus on, like really quickly. In the last 2 years, for me, like I'm 28 years old, but I feel that I'm over 50. I lived the occupation. I experienced the occupation. I was in the jail. I got arrested. I got injured. Like everything happened. My house got destroyed with my mom many times. But for me, like the last 2 years is like aside, and like the previous years is aside. The last 2 years, they are really the worst for all the Palestinians who are living here in Al-Khair and in Masaf Riyadh. Because if you heard about, like our hero, our symbol, our oldest man, our leader Haj Suleiman, who was resisting the occupation, and he was really known, he was really famous, he was leading everything here in the village. What happened to him? Haj Suleiman was known as a non-violent, as a symbol of our non-violent resistance. And what happened, that the Israeli police, they came to confiscate Palestinian cars, and Haj Suleiman was resisting the confiscation as usual by standing in front of the bulldozer and saying that our God is great. So what happened? They were really angry, and they ran over him by a truck carrying 3 Palestinian cars. Just imagine this situation. They pulled him more than 7 meters. And after, like staying, like in a critical situation in the intensive care in the hospital, 12 days, he passed away and we lost him. The question is, did we take his justice? No. Even like when we complained to get his justice, we found that they complained against us. And like when the things reach to kill people, it's really something disgusting. It's really something, like for me, like here it's not a conflict, because the conflict has to be between two like sides. At least they are close to each other in power, but here it's really oppression. They are attacking the people like a really hard way. And we all, I think, like if you heard what happened with Harun Abu Ram, who got killed a few weeks ago, after like he injured like 2 years ago, a soldier like shot him in his neck, and Harun was disabled for 2 years, and he was suffering for 2 years, and he passed away like just 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm mentioning all of this, and I'm telling you guys all of this. Just I wanted you to know that we, the Palestinians who are living in Masafir Yatta, we are just simple people seeking about simple rights. And unfortunately, we are in a time that our main rights became a dreams. If you ask anyone in all Masafir Yatta and in Umm Il-Kheir, what are our dreams? All of them will mention water, all of them will mention electricity, and all of them will mention good house. We want to live, we want to feel peace, we want to feel justice, we want to feel that we are humans. I mean, like it's really hard and bad feeling when I think that the animals taking their rights more than the humans who are living here. And it's really fact. It's really fact. Like we are living that here now. Like there is a checkpoint at the entrance of the village. They confiscated most of the cars here in the village. They killed one of the people here in the village. They raided the houses at night. They are checking everyone literally. And even like if they are really sure that you are from the area here, like they check you like many times, and they causing the people like a lot of problems. And the main proof about all of that last year they declared 8 Palestinian villages in Masafir Yatta, or like they gave 8 Palestinian villages in Masafir Yatta an eviction decision. Do you know what that means? This means that 1,400 people will be evicted from their houses. 1,400 people will live the third Nakba because they got transferred 2 times before. This means that the occupation is destroying the lives here. Don't believe anything in the media, please. Yani like you are hearing from me. I'm one of the people who are living this occupation. If you want to feel the occupation, like it's in Area C, it's in Il-Kheir, it's in Masafir Yatta. Here, what's happening here, no one can imagine. Honestly, as much as I can describe to you, friends, no one will imagine exactly what I mean. So not everything in the media is right. Like they all the time like try to cover like what they are doing for the Palestinians who are living here. So we the Palestinians who are living here, we just want peace and justice. We want our dignity. We want to feel that like the world is okay and there are people who are acting for our justice. And like there is a lot to say, honestly, but because of the time, thanks a lot for hearing me. It's really appreciated. I mean that we talked about the situation. It's really also like important for us. Also, like we feel that we are not alone, and that there are people who care about like all what's going on. And please, I mean, like take my words with you wherever you go. And tell the people exactly what's happening. Tell them that the truth. Tell them what you hear. Tell them that in Area C the occupation is doing is doing the worst. Tell them that here in Il-Kheir that we sleep in houses, but we have no guarantee if we will sleep in the same house again. Like now I'm sitting like in my mom's house. It has a demolition order. Everything in my village has a demolition order. If you will ask me that if this house will be here tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, literally, like maybe it will stay, maybe they will come tomorrow to destroy it. No one knows. So we are sleeping in houses that we are not sure if we will sleep in it again, tomorrow. Yeah. So thanks a lot. And we'll be with you, inshallah, later for questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Awdah, for speaking powerfully to the difficult realities of the community and of the families. And I really think for many of us who don't live the reality, who are abroad and also nearby, who don't experience it ourselves, it's very difficult to grasp the level of violence, also the level of impunity, the lack of accountability, the lack of justice from the government for their actions. I'm going to quickly, I think, show people a few more pictures from Umm Il-Kheir. And I saw someone ask also what reason the civil administration gives for the demolitions. You should speak to it first and foremost, Awdah, and maybe we can save that as the first question for the question answer. I'll say now that the civil administration, which let's remember is a military unit who's charged with defense and security and relates to Palestinians as an enemy population, is trying to enforce a larger policy of compelling the Palestinians in the region, in Area C, the agricultural lands, to the cities. So when people are at the civil administration ask why they demolished, they give circular logic, like we demolished the home because it didn't have a permit to be built. But the civil administration is itself the authority which would give those permits. Or it says we're demolishing the homes because it's next to a settlement and was built illegally. But the settlement was built on the lands of the village after people lived in the village for years and years. These are the dynamics that exist. I know there's a lot to unpack and discuss, so I think I'm going to, and we're a little bit running over time, so I think I'm going to speed through the rest of the tour so we can also hear the voices of other Palestinians who I have recorded interviews with, and then we'll come back for a question and answer shortly. I did want to show everyone, see, here are the electricity wires that Awdah was mentioning. These are the wires that run, give electricity to the Israeli settlement of Carmel, run over, across and above the village of Umm Il-Kheir and to the chicken coops of the settlement. So it's night and day, it's clear discrimination. These people are given the right to build these homes, these people are not. These people have electricity and running water, these people do not. There couldn't be a more stark example. And here also is a map I found. Here's showing an aerial shot of the village. Here is the settlement of Carmel. And here, each red dot is a demolition order, a structure with a demolition order. So you can see that almost every structure in Umm Il-Kheir has a demolition order that can be enforced at any time per the army's whim. Awdah, I don't know, are you still able to share with us? Here's a picture of you at the greenhouse. I was wondering if you could share for 2 minutes also about the incredible community projects you're involved with and the incredible things that the community is building despite all the difficulties and challenges. Here's a greenhouse, there's also a honeybee farm. I think you can't share now, so we'll come back to it afterwards, but I wanted to showcase that as well. Okay, speeding right along. We're moving now to the village of Susia, which is right down the road from Umm Il-Kheir, down on Route 317, which bifurcates the agricultural region of the South Hebron Hills from the city of Yatta here. So down 317, we're arriving, we would drive turn here right before the Israeli settlement of Susia, drive up the road past these fields I've so often seen on my left as I drive up, and we would turn left onto this dirt road, circle back, and be greeted at this bend by a sight something like this. There's always a rock or a welcome sign, some marker welcoming you to the village. These are friends several years ago who were working in partnership with the community. And when we zoom out just slightly, here is the community of Susia, Palestinian Susia. And they historically lived on these lands here across the road. But in 1986, you can see here on the map, in Hebrew it says, Susia Iriya Yehudit Tuma, the ancient Jewish city of Susia, which is true. It was an ancient Jewish settlement and there is an ancient synagogue, but in 1986, the Palestinians of Susia were expelled from the land they have lived on up until that point, under the pretext of that the army gave, being that the archaeological site was there, so they could not live there. The army expected them to leave and not return, but the people were resilient and defiant and moved just across the road to where they are today, which is historically their agricultural lands, not where their cave dwellings and their communities and houses were. In Susia today, I want to introduce you to the figure of Nasser Nawaja and the larger Nawaja family. Nasser in specific is a very special figure in the South Hebron Hills. He is responsible for many of the networks of advocacy, solidarity, and support that the South Hebron Hills has today, and that Susia also has cultivated over the years. He is a field researcher for B'Tselem, a human rights organization, and he has really spearheaded larger international advocacy campaigns in defense of the South Hebron Hills and in defense of the communities. Since 1986, when this land was expropriated for the archaeological site, the residents of Susia have not been able, almost at all, to return to the place that they lived, right across the road until 1986. But in the early 2000s, Nasser Nawaja had the idea to buy a ticket to the archaeological site, which is also hard to grasp. Generally, anyone can buy a ticket, but the Palestinians here are not permitted to go. He had this idea to buy a ticket and just walk in and see what would happen. And we'll see here what in fact did happen. Are people able to hear? If someone could type in the chat if you're able to hear, that'd be great. No, okay, I can fix that. One moment.
هاي الشارع كان هذا محل يخش الغنم جوا.
I hope people can hear
يخش
now.
الغنم من جوا.
This is Nasser Nawaja.
ما
أسور له. الهواء ممنوع الهواء ممنوع نشرب هواء.
This is Nasser's father.
לא, תשמע, אתה בא...
לא, אתה יכול לדבר עם המצלמה, ממני לא תקבל תשובה. בכל מקרה, תשאל שם את הבחור אם...
This is Nasser's father, I believe his name is Mohammed, if I'm not mistaken, being escorted back to their agricultural lands where they now live. Years later, Nasser again had a similar idea and invited a collective of international activists and Jewish anti-occupation solidarity workers to also buy tickets to the archaeological site and come together with a large group of Susia residents, Palestinian residents of Susia, to together enter into the archaeological site where the community had lived until 1986. And here we see that documented.
תושבי סוסיה נגרשו מכפר שלהם, הצבא מנסה לפנות כפרים אלה משנת 70 עד היום כל פעם מנסה, ובאחרונה מנסים יותר לגרש את הכפרים אלה.
كانوا مبسوطين يعني ما فيش أي إشي، بس لما أجى الاحتلال وأجوا وصاروا يعني يطلقوا عليهم نار وقذائف وإنه اطلعوا، أخذوا الأرض وحتى أخذوا الشباب أسروهم وظلوا النساء لحالهم هنا، بعدين طروهم برا. الحين الناس ما طلعوش عيط البلد.
זה אומר כאילו הכפר הזה היה לכולם, היה היום זמן הרומנים וזמן הכנענים והיהודים, כולם היו, איך אומרים, דור אחרי דור. حجات انهم عاشوا هنا واشتغلوا بهاي الارض وزرعوها وبدمهم يعني وتعبوا فيها وارضعونا فيها وربونا فيها، اللي هم الجيل الاكبر عاشوا فيه يعني الاربعينات والخمسينيات عاشوا هنا. بس الحمد رب العالمين يعني احنا برضو لو بتنفس هوا القريه يعني في عندك اشياء شائكه بتفصلنا عن الخط وعن مكان سكننا، بس انه احنا بنتنفس الهواء بضل يعني اشي اهون من اشي، يعني انه نتنفس هواء سوسي ولا انه نطلع مثلا من سوسيا بالمره. بس الوضع صعب للغايه، انه احنا هي ارضنا وحجرنا وبيوتنا قديمه، ابار المي موجوده يعني
الغارة بقت جوا تقطع جوا هيك.
لو سمحت، هذا بيتك؟
هذا بيت.
ممكن
جبت ثلاثة هنا في الطورها.
3 أولاد. الحمد لله. وكيف كان هالحياة هون؟
والله الحياة بقت كويسة، ولو أننا بنعذب مع الحلال وبنتعب ونشقى فيش أحسن منها بقت.
وكهوف يعني في الشتاء بكون دفين، وفي الصيف براد، مش زي الخيام شوب وفي الشتاء برد.
واسمك أحلام؟
أنا اسمي أحلام نواجه.
عندك أحلام على سوسيا؟
عندي أحلام كبيرة في سوسيا، إنه أشوف سوسيا غير، أشوف سوسيا فيها مدارس كثير من ناحية التعليم. أنا كملت تعليمي كنت أنزل على جامعات يطل البلد، بس أنا كنت بنفس سوسيا وحاليا بعلم في سوسي كمان، فإنه رسالتي تكون أقوى، إنه إحنا صح بنربي الماشي بنربي الأغنام، بس إحنا برضه مجتمع مثقف، مجتمع متحضر متعلم أيضا، وبدنا نعلم أولادنا كمان، بدنا كمان نفهمهم إنه هاي الأرض إلنا كمان.
فيش ولا إشي على هالفلسطينيين؟
فيش، هذا كله حاطين بسووا بيوت فلسطينية، هذا
على حياة عربي ولا؟
لا، هذا حاطينه إنه نسبوه إشي إسرائيلي. هاي إنه نسبينه إشي
So that's a glimpse into the realities and incredible personalities of Susia and of the Nawajah family. The next stop on our tour is the village of Atawani, right in between Susia and Il-Kheir. Heading to Atawani on Route 317 over here, we would turn in. right over here somewhere, there is a European Union funded bus stop, concrete bus stop, for a bus line that doesn't exist and a bus I've never seen. And those of you who have been to the region, to the West Bank, will likely have seen the remains of various humanitarian projects that the occupation has rendered moot by demolishing or rendering ineffective or not allowing the projects to go forward. Anyway, continuing forward, we would drive into Atawani. Somewhere on the left, there is a mural with calligraphy right here that I often see. We would walk up this road towards the family of Nasser Adara, Kifa Adara, and Basel Adara, and enter into the community center they have built beneath their home and decorated with incredible murals. So we would walk down this passageway to sit all together at the tables. We could see these incredible murals that were built along with Lou Rosner, a Jewish anti-occupation activist. Stunning. And we would sit together here in a circle of chairs, most likely. To our left would be a museum to nonviolent popular resistance the community has created, and to our right would be the shop of the Atwani Handicraft Cooperative, a self-sufficiency project of sorts. And sitting here, I've heard many times Kifa Adara, the matriarch of the Adara family, whose home we are sitting beneath, talk about the nonviolent campaign, the concerted and steadfast campaign that won the village of Twani a master plan. A master plan is the zoning districting you need to be able to allow to build by the military unit of the civil administration. They won that after very strong regular demonstrations, creative actions, and an insistent campaign demanding their rights. And they won the right to build a school. When Kifa mentions this, it seems to me her eyes always shine up with pride that they achieved this. And again, 99.9% of building permits are denied by the civil administration in all of Area C throughout the West Bank. So Atwani having the right to build is very much a rare exception, though in order to get a master plan, they also can now not build outside of that territory, and the civil administration is not allowing them to expand the zoning as the community is growing. And though they won the right to build a school and the right to build in general, it is not without complication, and there is much hardship, and they're right next to the settlement of Ma'on, from which they face a great deal of violence. Walking down the road, I could show you on the map, walking down the road from the Adaras, we would walk down this hill and arrive here and sit in this lot in the family home of the Horeinis. And here I have an interview with Mohammed Horeini, who is older today than he was when this interview was made. But we'll hear him talking about attending the school that they won the right to build in Twani, and lamenting the difficulties that his neighbors from the village of Tuba, zooming out on the map, Tuba is 2 kilometers away here. The school in Atwani serves many of the surrounding Palestinian communities. But starting after the school was built in the 2000s, after the right to build a school was won, the school children from Tuba who would walk to school would be attacked by the settlers from Ma'on. And today, after an Israeli Supreme Court decision, are escorted by the army back and forth to school. Sometimes the soldiers don't arrive to escort them, but it's important to highlight that the Supreme Court decided not to have justice and accountability and enforce that the settlers stop attacking the children. Instead, they mandated a military escort, which is not, of course, a great comfort to the children who have grown up with soldiers entering their homes and disregarding their human rights their whole lives. Anyway, we'll hear more about it from Mohammed himself, talking about his friends from Tuba and what they face.
أنا محمد حافظ الهريني، أنا عمري 14 سنة من قرية تواني. أنا بدي أحكي عن طلاب من الطوبة، منطقة اسمها الطوبة، بيجوا معناتهم عن المدرسة عشان يتعلموا في الشتاء والمطر. يعني بيجوا من بين مستوطنة حفاة معون بيجوا يعني بعد ما بيصير اعتداءات عليهم من قبل المستوطنين، وبعد ما الجيش بيصير بتخبى عنهم اللي موجوش عن المدرسة، وهم يعني بيروحوا يغامروا انه يروح يشوفوا وين راح الجيش. يعني اذا اجى عليهم مستوطنين ضربوهم الى ما يبقى هيك. بعد ما بتاخر عنهم الجيش بيقعد يعني لنص الحصص، بعدين بيجوا هنا، وبعد ما بيجوا في نص الطريق مستوطنين، يعني بيجوا مستوطنين بيجوا بيضربوهم من هناك، بيضربوهم حجار. في كان منهم المناطق بيجوا من هنا بيروح على في جبل دوف، بيروحوا في مستوطنين بيصيروا على طرامي بيضربوهم. يعني قبل فترة ضربوا بنت حجر في راسها، أخذوها على المستشفى عشان يشوفوا راسها شو صار فيها. إنهم بيجوا مستوطنين بيضربوا قدام الجيش وهيك، بيجوا بيضربونا وإحنا نيجي يعني ندافع عن حالنا. الجيش بيجي بقف معاهم، بقفش معانا، يعني بيجوا بيضربوا بسووا كسر، وإحنا ندافع عنه غصب عن الجيش. إنهم بيجوا بيضربوا هم بالجيش بقف معاهم. هذا يعني إشي يعني قهر كل واحد فينا من أهل القرية. أنا في عندي أصحاب كثير إنهم طلعوا من المدرسة ما كملوش حلمهم إنهم يدرسوا، يعني هم من إعاقاتهم المستوطنين، وأنا يعني بتمنى من كل قلبي إنهم يجوا يكملوا دراستهم ما يعيقهم أي إشي. وفي كمان طلاب يعني كملوا درجتهم كملوا على
So that's Mohammed wishing that the violence would end and his friends from Tuba could access education more easily. In this video, we followed the children from Tuba walking towards Tuani. The pink building also behind Mohammed is the school in Tuani. If we followed those same school children in the afternoon back to Tuba, we would walk the 2 kilometers through the middle of Ma'on and the outpost of Chabat Ma'on, which is illegal under Israeli rule also. And then we would arrive in Tuba to the firing zone, which is an area of the South Hebron Hills that has been declared a firing zone for military training. In the early 1980s, Ariel Sharon, who during his career was also prime minister, instituted a policy of declaring firing zones, and meeting minutes from the early 80s have found records of him stating that he would declare firing zones, that is districts for military training in the West Bank, explicitly in places where they would be designed to strategically displace Palestinian residents. Today, 18% of the West Bank is designated as firing zones, a tremendous amount. And that's also only within the 60% that's directly controlled by the Israeli military. So it's a tremendous amount of land and a tremendous hardship to the residents. Here is a map of the firing zone in the South Hebron Hills. Here is the active firing zone, and here's the inactive. You can see Tuba in the area of the firing zone. And in the early 1980s, this was declared a firing zone, along with many other places in the West Bank, despite the fact that 12 villages lived there. In 1999, the military forcibly evicted all the inhabitants of these villages on the pretext that they were residing illegally in a firing zone. Again, circular logic, completely ignoring the fact that the families had been living in the area for many years. At the time, the Association for Civil Rights in Israel filed a petition, and since then, the matter has been in the courts. However, on May 4th, 2022, the Israeli High Court issued a final decision on the case, permitting the army to forcibly evict these communities at a moment's notice. Campaigns have arisen since in solidarity and in support of basic dignity and human rights for their communities and in support of the recognition of their historic claims to the land. Moving from Tuba deeper into the firing zone, I want us to hear from a resident of the village of Isfay al-Fawqa about what living in a military firing zone means to her and how it affects her life. Sorry, in Khibat al-Fakit, a little bit south of where I just indicated. You can see the hamlet here.
So right now we're standing in what the Israeli military has designated as firing zone 918. Now the Israeli military says that the Palestinians who live here, who have been living here for decades, have no right to be here. The Israeli military actually has the power to come in and raze this entire village to the ground at any moment. Every single one of the structures that you see around me has a demolition order on it. And if the military comes in and razes this village to the ground, the Palestinians who live here are going to be left homeless with nowhere to go. Majda Abu Sabha is one of the residents of the village. In the past year, the Israeli military has destroyed her home 3 times, with the latest demolition taking place just a few weeks ago.
أجوا فجأة إحنا كنا يعني مشغولين في شغلنا وجينا الجرافات لندات جيش إيش لا يوصف قام هدم بقوة لا خلونا نقدم نطلع العفش لا خلونا نقدم نطلع الأثاث من البيوت طب في أطفال في حلال في إيش يعني أصبحوا تحت العراء.
كيف تكون شعورك يوم تطلعي قدامك وتشوفي آثار بيتك يعني مهدومة؟
طبعا الواحد يصيبه صدمة مش جايين فيهم احنا بعيدين عنهم بلادنا يعني هاي وين نروح يعني احنا ما لنا مأوى خلاف المأوى هذا لا خلونا خيمة لا خلونا دار ولا خلونا حتى الخيام اجوا هدوهن احنا معرضين للخطر احنا في اي لحظة انهم يجوا ينسفوا بيوتنا وين نروح نقدر نعيش في الحر وفي البرد الكارث هذه البلاد هاي.
Just under 900 structures are under imminent threat of demolition in the firing zone. Those structures include homes, livestock pens, latrines, water cisterns, mosques, and schools. A few meters from the rubble of Majda's home is a local school that Israel has slated for demolition. This is one of 4 schools in Masafer Yatta that has an Israeli demolition order on it. The Israeli army can come in at any time and destroy this school. Now, this particular school services around 70 to 80 children from primary school up until high school. The residents here say that if the school is destroyed, it's going to severely impact the education and literacy that they've been working so hard to improve for years.
A school not far that looked very similar to that one was demolished several months after this interview was taken in Isfay al-Fawqa. And it was terrible to see. As we continue to move through the firing zone here, I want to end our virtual tour by showing a video from an action in Jinba just over a week ago, where flying checkpoints have been put up on either side of the village, effectively restricting freedom of movement in and out of the village. And a group of Israeli solidarity activists came to demonstrate against the army checkpoints that have been put up over the last weeks. It's in Hebrew, so I'm just going to go to the very end so you can see it, and then I'll share some closing remarks before moving to the questions.
האנשים יצאו החוצה ובשנת 99 אותנו זה מעניין בשנת 99 בשנת 99 בולדוזרים של הצבא גירשו מכאן אזרחים. בשנת 99 בולדוזרים של הצבא גירשו מכאן אזרחים.
What was happening in the video is that the Israeli demonstrators in solidarity with Palestinian communities were saying, in the last years, these communities are being displaced through a deliberate plan of the authorities. And the soldier was responding, "Zelo ma'nyen oti," in Hebrew, "It doesn't interest me. I'm not concerned." I wanted to close with that because while it's clear that the authorities are not responsive to the histories and the voices of Palestinians in the region, it is incumbent on us as a broader community of conscious to be responsive, to bear witness, and to stand for a vision of justice in the region. With that, I want to move to question and answer. I think in the end, actually, what might make the most sense is, Awdah, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself again, and I'm going to ask you a first question. And then if others who have questions can write them in the chat with question at the start with a colon or a dash, then I can easily identify them and we can open it up for the next 15 minutes before closing the session. Awdah, I'm curious, at the end of the last video, she showed a school. You, I forgot to mention earlier, are also a school teacher. I wanted to ask if you could talk about your experiences as a school teacher and educator in South Hebron, and what it means to you. Does that make sense? Let me see if I can. I think I need to unmute you. One moment. Great. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Awdah, are you there? We still can't hear you. Okay, let's see if Awdah gets his volume to work. Otherwise, let's see what other questions. Question, what can we as virtual tourists do and what actions should we take? There are many campaigns in solidarity with the residents of the South Hebron Hills that internationals can, and people on the ground also in Israel-Palestine, can join, can participate in. There is a Save Masafer Yatta campaign that Green Olive will be sending updates about. Right now, there's this feeling of anticipation as we wait to see if the army institutes a mass eviction and expulsion. The Supreme Court has now stated that it can expel the 12 villages of the firing zone in the South Hebron Hills at any time under the new government in Israel also, which has expressed explicit intent to de facto or de jure annex Area C of the West Bank if it can. We're expecting that that's possible. And when the time comes, there will be solidarity actions around the world. Awdah, I see you managed to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, you should jump in and speak yourself around these questions.
Yeah, the first question about like the schools and the education. So like the last year, the occupation started, like a new strategy by destroying the schools. And this is something, it's happening, like for the first time here. No one expected that will happen. Everyone is shocked. And I, as a teacher, I know and I felt and I experienced how the children, how the students feel about that. They didn't. I mean, the occupation. They didn't leave anything for the people. Even like on their education, they are fighting them. Just imagine. I mean, like they already destroyed the school. So in a spy, and the students now they need to walk, like instead of, like just walk like tens of meters to get to the school, now they need to walk like a few kilometers to reach, like the second school. And when they came to destroy it, they destroy it, like while the students is there, like in front of their eyes, like even they were really small. They were just like from the first grade until the sixth grade. So, like from 6 years until 12 years, just imagine, like all, like the forces with the bulldozers, with the army, they come to destroy a school, like 5 rooms for students or children who are from 6 years to 12 years. And after that, a week after that, the people, like from the village, they built another tent to use it as a school, and they confiscated the tent. Then we built, like the third tent. Also, they confiscated it again. So just imagine, like all of that happening just because the people, they don't want the people to learn. They don't want the people, like to know the history of what's happening and what happened, like before. After Isfai school, also like they moved to another school in a different village in a Bedouin community, Khashm al-Karam. And they gave, like the school a final demolition order. This means that it's like 96 hours. And after, like the 96 hours has passed, they declared, like a decision from the Israeli High Supreme Court that the school will be destroyed. So I visited that school just like a few days ago. I talked with the people, all the people there, especially like the children and the students. All of them, when they knew that I'm a teacher, all of them were asking me, please do whatever, we want our school. We don't want them, like to destroy the school. What we can do to stop them from destroying the schools. One of the girls told me that I was not doing good, like in the second school before the community built this school, and now because this school is really close to me, so like I'm doing well, and I'm much better in the school. So I cannot imagine if they will destroy it, what will happen. So it's really a big problem. It's really something that, as I mentioned before, no one expected. They are really fighting the people in everything. Yeah, they are destroying their lives. They don't want the people to learn. They don't care like how they destroy the children's feelings. They don't care about all of that. So they made it really hard, and we are really scared because if they will continue with this, because like there are more than like 10 schools like in South Hebron Hills for boys and girls. If they will keep going, and destroying all of them, it will be really a disaster. So we wish that all the people will stand together, like to prevent them from destroying like the schools.
Thanks, Awdah. And everyone deserves a right to an education and to learn and build themselves into the future freely. So it's very difficult to hear about. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I saw one question in the chat asking if Area C is annexed, would Palestinians become citizens? I just wanted to quickly speak to that and then close out today's session. Though I wish we had so much more time with you, Awdah, for all of us together to talk about what all we've seen means and how we can act in solidarity. Green Olive will be sending resources out after this event also. But to the question, if Area C was annexed by the current government, it would not be as part of any project of equality or towards democracy. Likely, if Area C was annexed, I believe that, and all I've seen makes me believe that Palestinians in the region would be transferred potentially to Area A, outside of Area C, to the cities, or would become citizens, but under an unequal set of policies of some sort of de jure segregation or inequality, like we've seen in other parts of the world and other circumstances like that. As people who support democracy and human rights and a vision of collective freedom and liberation, we need to work to oppose annexation of Area C in the West Bank. If people want to reach out to Awdah, I'm sure he can be found. Contact me, contact Green Olive, follow all of our different projects. And with that, I'll end and say thank you all really for joining this timely conversation, for asking your pertinent questions. Thanks again, Awdah, to you for your invaluable perspective, and sincerely for your time. And thanks to each of you on behalf of Green Olive for joining. Green Olive depends on contributions from you or wider community to cover the costs of our events, sustain our work combating the ongoing displacement of Palestinians, and shifting the needle of international opinion around the occupation. You can contribute at greenolivetours.com/contributions, which I'll send now again. Thank you so much. Your contributions today will also go to support community projects in Il-Kheir, including the greenhouses, the honeybee farm, and the purchasing of new vehicles to replace those illegally confiscated by the army in recent months. These projects and resources support the community to maintain freedom of movement and their steadfastness in the land, despite the Israeli military's attempts to unroot them and drive them from the South Hebron Hills. Your support will sustain future advocacy initiatives and the work of our incredible tour guides in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron, and throughout the occupied West Bank, who many of you have met and every day are bringing international visitors to the occupied territories to see the reality with their own eyes, bear witness and hear testimony from Palestinians, and develop relationships with communities living under occupation whose voices they can amplify in their home communities around the world. Lastly, your contributions will also help Green Olive to create strategic advocacy resources, media trainings, informational films and primers, and other publications and materials whose aim is to expose the larger international community to the reality on the ground in Israel-Palestine, amplify the voices of human rights defenders, and provide people around the world with the tools they need to engage in meaningful advocacy for the end of the occupation and the development of a democratic and just society. We will be launching a new community engagement, membership, and informational platform soon. Stay tuned. That will collect these resources and make them available to wider audiences in new and exciting ways, and in ways we hope will empower our wider communities to stand with the communities of the South Hebron Hills and others facing demolition, eviction, and dislocation as part of a broader community of conscience around the world. Thanks again. We hope everyone has lovely days. We hope to see you for our upcoming events. We hope you'll be in touch if you want any more information or to have any other follow-up conversations about how to stand in solidarity. Enjoy your days and see everyone soon. Thanks all.